Today I'm going to be sharing my top tips on how you can get a healthy, happy jade plant. And this jade plant is actually one of the first houseplants that I ever added to my collection. A couple of them are dead, I have to say, but this one has stood the test of time. And I would say that the jade plant is perfect for beginners, especially since this was my first beginner plant. And this one actually started as a tiny plant, no bigger than this when it started, and I've grown it into this sort of tree-like form, and I'll talk a bit later about how I've done that. But first I just want to go into some of the basic care tips that you'll need for your jade plant. Jade plants do like to be placed in a very well lit area. Don't be afraid to give your jade plant some direct sun. Mine is in the kitchen window and it gets several hours of direct sun a day, more so in the summer obviously, but it is absolutely fine and it loves it. However, if your jade plant is not used to direct sun, then make sure you acclimatise it slowly, as it may burn the leaves. Mine is fully used to it and it's always been in a sunny window, so it's fine. Make sure you pot your jade plant into a very well draining soil. You can use cactus and succulent mix. What I like to use is, you can see in there, you can see the perlite, the white bits. I like to use a mixture of cocoa coir, perlite and either sand or horticultural grit. And it's really important for this plant to have a well draining soil. You don't want it to be holding on to too much water because they are at risk of root rot. If you find yourself unsure when to water, I would recommend using a moisture meter and wait until the meter reads completely dry. So all you've got to do is stick it into the soil there, and provided it reads completely dry on here, you can give it a thorough watering and then do not water it again, basically until the meter reads completely dry again. And overwatering is only due to the frequency that you water. So let's say if you water today and then you water again tomorrow when the soil is still wet, that would be overwatering. However, when you do water it, it's absolutely fine to give it a good soaking, let the water go all the way through, put as much water as you want in there. But the key is to then just wait until this meter reads dry again, or you can stick your finger in and feel when it's dry. And that's how to prevent overwatering. So it isn't the amount of water that you give it when you do water it, it's how often you water it. And you should be letting that soil dry out completely before you water again. That's the advice I've followed, and this plant has thrived on that advice. Obviously during winter I do water much less, and then in summer a little bit more. Okay, so next on to propagation. Now these are super easy to propagate, and all you need to do is to snip off the tip, then let the end callus over for a few days, and then you can just pop it in some soil. You can also do it in water too, but I prefer to just pop it in soil. And I'll give you an example of some propagations. These were all propagations from this plant, and all I did was just cut the tips off, pop them in the soil, and they've grown into these little plants. And this is also another great way to get your jade plant to branch off and get a thicker trunk, because you'll notice this one, when they're small like this, the trunks are not very thick and it's just basically one stem. So in order to get the plant to get a very thick trunk like you see here, and also to have branches, you can see that this one has got branches, all you need to do, like I said before, is snip the tips off. Sometime during sort of late spring, early summer I usually do it. And what will happen is, where you've snipped it off, usually 2 more branches will come from that one shoot. Now, it doesn't happen every time, so don't be discouraged if it doesn't happen to every single one of your cuts. But more often than not, you will get two new branches from the place that you've cut. And I will demonstrate this for you on camera at some point, but I will have to wait until spring, summer to do that. But just know that it's absolutely okay to do that. There's no need to be scared. It will grow back. And you can see this is another plant that I have, and you can see I've done the exact same thing on this one. So you should be able to see there are two branches coming out here. That used to be just the one here, and I cut it there, and eventually two new shoots grew back in. And you can actually see some of the propagations that I've put back in the soil there. And as I say, I will demonstrate this for you on camera soon, but until then. And now just to say a bit about temperature. Now obviously they like it when it's a little bit warmer, but my jade plants are absolutely fine during the winter. It does get quite cold here in winter in the UK. All of my jade plants are fine. They never seem to complain or suffer, and so I wouldn't worry too much. I mean, I wouldn't shut your plants behind a curtain during winter, because that could be dangerous to them because it will get quite cold. Try to keep them away from the cold as much as you can, but personally I've found that they are fairly tolerant of colder conditions. As I say, this plant here is a few years old now, and it's doing just fine, and it's been through several winters. And just a word on pests as well. Sometimes succulents, including the jade plant, can be susceptible to mealybugs, and these are just little white sort of fluffy looking insects. You've probably seen them before. Don't be scared, it's fine. All I do is I take a cotton bud, I dip it in some surgical spirit, which I believe in the US you call rubbing alcohol. I just dip it in there and I apply it directly to the mealybug whenever I see one, and that seems to keep them at bay. It will kill the mealybug on contact. So that's what I do when I just see one or two here and there. I do examine my plants regularly for mealybugs. So the minute I see one or two, I will dip this cotton bud in the surgical spirit or rubbing alcohol, and I will just put it directly onto that mealybug, so I never let them get out of control. So I would recommend checking on a regular basis, as I do. I'd also recommend, as with all houseplants, that you clean the leaves on this plant on a regular basis. Now I do like to give this plant a showering off now and again, but usually I do that in summertime. Just make sure you keep it out of direct sun whilst it's wet. But since we're in the middle of winter, I'm going to be cleaning it today with a dry microfiber cloth. And I'm just going to gently dust the leaves with my cloth. And the reason we do this is because if the plant has a layer of dust on its leaves, it won't be able to absorb light effectively, and this could affect its ability to photosynthesize. So it's important with this plant and all house plants to keep the leaves nice and clean. And if you enjoyed that video, you may enjoy this one here, or maybe this one here.